I'm anti-woke.
What does it mean? What does it mean? When and where do you come across the sort of wokeness to which you are so passionately opposed?
I don't want to quote examples, really.
You kind of have to.
I can't, because then you'll get everyone.
That's the point, isn't it?
Because I think most of your listeners know what I'm referring to.
I have not got a clue.
What the hell is woke? And why does it trigger so much rage, confusion, and division? In this video, I'm breaking down where the term actually came from, how it's evolved into one of the most controversial movements of our time, and why it matters way more than most people think. We're going beyond culture war takes and into the developmental psychology behind wokeness, how it fits into the evolution of human consciousness, and what a post-woke world could actually look like. To understand the emergence of modern-day wokeness, we need to go way back to the 18th century and the Enlightenment era. This is the era where science, rationality, and data exploded onto the scene. For the first time in history, large groups of people began to abandon religious authority in favor of evidence, reason, and objective measurement. Before that, most cultures were shaped by Abrahamic religious orders. The laws of the land were usually entangled with the laws of God. The word, whether it came from Jesus, a prophet, or a priest, was not to be questioned. But that changed. The Enlightenment triggered a collapse of blind faith, and in its place rose the scientific method, reductionism, and the pursuit of measurable progress. People saw that health, wealth, and happiness didn't have to come from a divine favor. They could be engineered. We traded mysticism for math, industry, and secular humanism. The Enlightenment emphasized liberty, reason, constitutional government, and the separation of church and state. It laid the foundations for democracy, civil rights, and the sciences. From there, we got the Industrial Revolution, mass production, trade, capitalism, global conquest, technological growth. And from that point on, the Western world has largely run on the same engine: rational, material, and secular progress. That's been our cultural center of gravity in the West for over 250 years.
It must have seemed like the good times would never end. But then
the 60s happened. Something insane hit the Western psyche in the 1960s. San Francisco, 1967, the summer of love. The older boomers had just hit their 20s. The greatest generation watched in horror as society came undone in real time. Long hair, rock music, LSD, mushrooms, ancient Indian philosophy, gurus, the Beatles, yoga, Volkswagen vans. But this wasn't just youth rebellion or drugs and music festivals. It marked a massive psychological shift in the cultural center of gravity. And if the whiff of woke is already turning you off, stay with me, because this is where it gets interesting. Let me introduce you to a model that explains all of this. Not just woke ideology, but how entire cultures evolve, why people clash, and why your Twitter feed feels like a war zone. It's one of the best psychological models we have, backed by decades of research by American psychologist Claire Graves, and later refined into what we now call spiral dynamics. Put simply, spiral dynamics maps how our values and worldviews evolve over time. As both individuals and societies grow, we move through distinct stages, each with its own beliefs, priorities, and lens on the world. These stages are color-coded for clarity, and they show how our thinking becomes more complex in response to changing life conditions. It's a roadmap of human consciousness, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So when we started this video with the Enlightenment, what we were really looking at was the cultural center of gravity shifting from blue to orange on the spiral dynamics model. What does that mean? Well, each stage in spiral dynamics represents a contained value system, a worldview that repeatedly shows up across cultures and individuals. And yes, this model does claim something spicy. There is a hierarchy here. Some worldviews are more integrated, more adapted, and more developed than others. Let's start with the blue value system. According to Spiral Dynamics Integral, one of the key resources built on the research of Claire Graves, the blue value system emerges when chaos and brute power no longer cut it for surviving in the world, when people start craving order, meaning, and stability. Blue believes in an absolute truth, divine law, moral codes. It's the belief that if you follow the rules now, you'll be rewarded later. It's about discipline, duty, and sacrifice for a higher cause. To blue, the world is governed by a sacred structure. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and you have a role to play. Your job is to live according to the way, whether that's religious law, national law, or family tradition. You've definitely met people whose center of gravity is in the blue value system. Picture a devout church elder, a disciplined military officer, a traditional school headmaster. They believe deeply in structure, routine, and moral clarity. They value punctuality, responsibility, and keeping your word. To them, life is a moral journey. Do your duty, keep the faith, and the reward will come. And yes, these are the people who absolutely despise hippies.
There are systems for a reason in this world. Economic stability, interest rates, growth. It's not all a conspiracy to keep you in little boxes, all right? It's only the miracle of consumer capitalism that means you're not lying in your own shit, dying at 43 with rotten teeth, and a little pill with a chicken on it is not going to change that.
Now, of course, value systems don't just shape individuals, they show up at the societal level too. At scale, blue creates traditionalist, theocratic, or hierarchical systems. Think of Saudi Arabia, where religious law governs daily life. Or the Catholic Church with its sacred texts, rituals, and clear authority structure. Or a British boarding school, uniforms, hymn singing, national anthems, prayers, highly structured schedule. Blue systems create stability, identity, and purpose. When healthy, they build lasting institutions. When unhealthy, they turn into rigid authoritarian machines, dogmatic, controlling, and allergic to change. So you can probably recognize a little bit of the blue value structure in yourself or in someone you know. If you imagine the world before the 1700s, this wasn't just one value system amongst many. This was the predominant value system. Think of Methodism, that old school Christianity with its agricultural focus, praying for good harvests, fearing eternal damnation. Think Mormons, the Amish people, feudal kingdoms, where kings ruled by divine right. So when the Enlightenment hit, what we really saw was the cultural leap from the blue value system to the next value system in the spiral, orange. What is orange? Look around. If you're in a modern Western country, you're already in it. So the orange value system was actually lingering around as much as 1,000 years ago, but it really became the cultural center of gravity in the wake of the Enlightenment era, roughly from the 1700s onwards, as individuals began to break free from the rigid structures of the blue value system and chase something new: autonomy, success, personal achievement. Orange is built on rational thinking, strategic planning, and the belief that progress comes through effort. The world to orange is a game, rules to master, resources to optimize, and prizes to win. It values freedom, innovation, measurable results, and calculated risk. This is the era where science, technology, capitalism, entrepreneurship, and personal development explode into culture. Life becomes less about serving an Abrahamic divine order and more about mastering reality through logic, hustle, and innovation.
America, go for it. Why not set out with your friends on the path of adventure and try to start up your own business? You too can become leaders in this great new era of progress, the age of the entrepreneur.
So for a person at Orange, picture a tech startup founder, high-powered lawyer, self-made entrepreneur, or honestly just anyone working a modern job in a modern city. It's pretty much most people. This person is ambitious, efficient, constantly scanning for the next opportunity. They believe that success is earned, that reality can be shaped through clever thinking and decisive action. They probably enjoy a little competition, wear their achievements with pride, and are always tracking growth, both personal and professional. But while Orange excels at getting results, it often struggles with slowing down, connecting emotionally, or seeing beyond its own goals. It can be brilliant, but also hyper-individualistic, disconnected, and endlessly chasing more. So for a society or an organization at the Orange value system, well, Orange dominates in modern capitalist democracies, which means, for the most part, the entire Western world. It's the driving force behind Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and global corporations like Apple, Amazon, or Tesla. These systems are built on vision, data, meritocracy, and the belief that anyone can rise with the right mindset and strategy. When healthy, Orange has created unprecedented levels of innovation, prosperity, and personal freedom. When unhealthy, it's exploited ecosystems, poisoned food systems, commodified cultures, and disconnected us from meaning and each other. Thanks for sticking with me, because this is the part that sets the stage for what happened in the 1960s. To really understand wokeness, we have to understand what came after Orange and why it broke the system. So let's talk about the green value system, the one that gave birth to wokeness. Here's the twist. This is a value system that is only more recently emerging and integrating itself into our society. Notice how on the spiral dynamics model, it sits above orange. So yes, trigger warning. That means it transcends and includes the blue and orange value systems. So yeah, the quote-unquote hippies are more evolved than you think. Let's break down the green value system and see if you start to smell the wokeness. So green arises as a reaction to the competitive individualism and materialism of the orange value stage. It realizes that logic alone can't solve life's most meaningful problems, like connection, inequality, or emotional healing. Green is about inclusivity, compassion, sustainability, and inner growth. It sees the world as a global village, a web of interconnection between people, planet, and consciousness. Where orange says, be the best, green says, no one's better than anyone else. It values emotional intelligence, consensus, dialogue, social justice, decentralization, and building environments where all voices are heard. This is where you get LGBTQ awareness, anti-racism, mental health advocacy, eco-activism, decolonization, and of course, relativism. So for a person at green, imagine somebody who's emotionally attuned, spiritually curious, deeply committed to social fairness. They care about inner work, healing, and authentic communication. They might be an activist, a yoga teacher, a trauma therapist, or a social justice advocate. They're the kind of person who stereotypically, and this is a caricature, drinks oat milk lattes, has a man bun or a crystal necklace, just got back from a silent retreat, uses words like intention, energy, late-stage capitalism, describes themselves as anti-racist, anti-fascist, anti-meat in some cases. They hate Donald Trump.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama.
They're often accused by society of being lazy socialists. Lazy European socialism. But they don't actually care. They're here to help humanity evolve. At their best, they radiate warmth, authenticity, and care. At their worst, they can be conflict avoidant, emotionally reactive, and rigid in their tolerance, often canceling those who don't speak their language of wokeness. This, my friends, is the value system that underpins modern-day wokeness. And it's under attack. Why? Because every value system, every stage, comes with both healthy and unhealthy expressions and contributions in our society. So before we go any deeper into woke, let's just recap the gifts and the shadows of each of the stages that came before. So the contributions of a healthy stage blue value system brought us purpose, meaning, and long-term structure. It brought discipline, self-restraint, and moral frameworks. It brought rule of law, courts, police, national defense. It brought public education, formalized religion, stable institutions. Without the blue value system operating, society collapses in a few days. The unhealthy contributions of the blue value system gave us authoritarianism and dogma, shame, guilt, and moral judgment, suppression of individuality, intolerance of others, religious fundamentalism, fascism, and theocracy, abuse, censorship, and zero-tolerance policies, resistance to science, modernity, or anything that challenged tradition. From witch trials to Jim Crow, from Galileo's condemnation to sectarian war, blue's shadow has shaped history. So the contributions of the healthy orange modern value system gave us science, technology, modern medicine, democracy, human rights, civil liberties, capitalism, entrepreneurship, upward mobility, AI, space exploration, global networks, rational problem solving, scalable systems, laptops, iPhones, and yes, this very video. But the unhealthy contributions of the orange modern value system gave us materialism, burnout, overconsumption, workaholism, emotional disconnection, corporate exploitation and wealth inequality, greenwashing, clickbait, PR spin, displacement of indigenous communities, monoculture farming, factory meat, and food deserts, obesity, diabetes, ultra-processed food addiction, the Monsanto lawsuits, oil spills, and Amazon deforestation, climate change, the refugee crisis, and mass extinction. Oh, and remember that little town in Mexico, San Juan Jamula. Locals were facing water shortages and were forced to drink Coca-Cola, leading to skyrocketing diabetes and death rates, all for profit. So yeah, when those right-wing influencers say that capitalism is the best thing that's ever happened.
Well, I have to say, probably not, mate. Probably not.
And that brings us back to green. Green rises from the wreckage of the orange value system, saying, we can't keep doing this. We need to heal. We need to care. But of course, it too has a shadow. And the shadow of the green value system is what people now call woke. Rowan, stop being so woke. Get to the woke part. What the hell is woke? Woke, as it's used today, isn't just a slur or a buzzword. It's what happens when the stage green value system goes toxic. It represents the unhealthy manifestations of this value system across individuals, organizations, and Western culture as a whole. TV shows, woke. Coffee, woke. Jobs, woke. Haircuts, woke. When the green value system becomes unhealthy, it often overcorrects for the rigid control of blue and the competitive drive of orange. It starts as compassion and slides into emotional manipulation, ideological rigidity, and tribal moralism. Number 1, moral relativism and lack of boundaries. Everything is valid, so nothing is clearly right or wrong. Decisions are avoided, accountability is blurred, and difficult conversations are dodged to keep the peace. Let's say that a fundamentalist terror attack happens in a city. Instead of starting to address some actual solutions, the green value system will shut down any conversation by saying, well, not all Muslims, and without any consideration of Sunni versus Shiite or Wahhabist fundamentalist Islam or the concept of jihad, the conversation is shut down and you're threatened with being labeled as a racist. It's fear of conflict, it's shutting down the conversation, and when challenged, retorting to the classic, you're a racist Islamophobe, and so on. Green avoids hurting people's feelings, even when doing so risks greater harm. Number 2, cancel culture and virtue signaling. Moral absolutism disguised as compassion, labeling people as bad or dangerous for expressing dissenting views. We welcome all views and perspectives, except your obviously racist and oppressive ones. Digging up comments from 10 years ago to prove that someone is racist. All views and perspectives are relative, except of course my view that all views and perspectives are relative. Empathy becoming a weapon. Inclusion becoming ideological compliance. Shaming and exiling those outside the ideological circle.
There was a lot of new energy in the room tonight. Some of it was just so Rainbow Rhythms. And some of it was just so not Rainbow Rhythms.
Why don't you just say who you're talking about? You're talking about me, aren't you? If there isn't room here for people who stand against everything you believe in, then what sort of a hippie free-for-all is this?
Think about Bud Light, the Gillette Best a Man Can Be advert, and dozens of other go woke, go broke ad campaigns. People start to smell a rat after a while. Anti-structure and anti-leadership. Rejection of hierarchy, which results in organizational chaos and decision paralysis. So the aversion to power leads to leaderless groups that drift or implode. Think of all those new age workplaces where no one's really the boss. In an attempt to flatten the hierarchy, they mistake a growth hierarchy, a valuable, useful structure of evolving competency and responsibility, for a oppression hierarchy, where anything above anyone in a hierarchy is clearly oppressive and using their power for evil purposes. As a result, they melt the hierarchy pyramid into a flatland nothing, so with no central authority, decision-making is overly democratic and takes more time than it needs to. Remember, Green wants to include all views of the group without exclusion, a noble goal that generates too much time wasted. Ironically, many of these stage green organizations, whether it's charities, Greenpeace, environmental causes, they always face leadership issues because there's an inherent aversion to power that leads to leaderless drifting. The group eventually implode or melt away. Whatever happened to Occupy Wall Street? I guess no one wanted to be a CEO of that movement at a time when CEOs weren't so popular. Number 5, spiritual bypassing. Love and light and flowery language used to avoid pain, grief, conflict, or shadow work. Negativity is shunned, conflict is avoided, and vibes are policed. Killing my frequency, bro. Killing my vibe here, bro.
And some of it was just so not Rainbow Rhythms.
Hostility towards achievement and structure. Success is seen as oppression. Money is corruption. Power is ego. Green often attacks the orange and blue value systems without understanding them. Number 7, campus deplatforming. Speakers being disinvited from universities because their views don't align with prevailing progressive norms. Schools prioritizing emotional comfort over challenge. Removing grades, competition, or critical feedback to avoid discomfort, sometimes to the detriment of rigor. Progressive communities where dissent is silenced. One correct perspective dominates. Those who question it are labeled as problematic or aggressive. Fear of language policing in media or workplaces. People walking on eggshells, unable to express honest thoughts or make mistakes without backlash. Overcorrection in comedy, art, and media. Creativity being stifled due to fear of offending any subgroup. Cultural revisionism. For example, casting a black actress to play a historically Macedonian Greek queen. The intention is representation, but the outcome is backlash, lawsuits, and division. Identity politics is seen as more valuable than historical accuracy. Now, I'm not a gamer, but there's another example of this in the Assassin's Creed games. While widely praised for diversity and setting, some fans criticized prior games in the franchise for historically inconsistent representation, particularly when modern values were inserted into ancient cultures unrealistically. For example, openly LGBTQ characters in medieval or religiously strict settings where there would have been severe consequences. Rise up, gamers. Woke elitism. Shaming those who aren't vegan, who drink alcohol or don't live up to high ideals of purity while ignoring personal contradictions. I'm so spiritual and vegan, and I can't believe I can't find my tribe who's also spiritual and vegan. I have to be around all these normies. Everyone is spiritual in their own way. Corporate woke washing, Pride Month marketing. I love this. Companies changing their logos or social media profiles to rainbows for Pride Month while donating to anti-LGBTQ politicians or operating in anti-LGBTQ countries, using inclusivity as a marketing tool, not as a genuine virtue. Notice how those brands don't change their logo to the pride colors for their social media accounts based in China or Saudi Arabia, where there are more severe social consequences for such things. DEI training that silences dissent, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that penalize disagreement, even if it's thoughtful or evidence-based. This creates environments where people fear asking honest questions or expressing doubt. It's not real inclusion. Art and literature sensitivity filtering and trigger warnings. Classic books being edited or banned because they don't align with modern green values. For example, Roald Dahl's books being rewritten to remove offensive descriptions. Unhealthy green attempts to eliminate discomfort rather than foster growth through context and conversation. Overcorrection in climate policy. Sudden bans on fossil fuels, meat, or farming subsidies without adequate support for transition have triggered civil unrest. We see that in the Dutch farmers' protests, the UK farmers' protests in recent years. Unhealthy green just sacrifices livelihoods in the name of ecological morality without a systems-aware transition. How about YouTube or social media content flagged or removed for triggering emotion or misinformation that challenges progressive consensus? There's a certain medical topic which underwent substantial censorship in the last 5 years, and if I said anything about it, I'd have a little misinformation notification down in my video, so I'll be very careful with that. The green value system does want a better world, but without structure, nuance, or integration, it collapses under its own ideals. But let's remember, why did the green value system emerge in the first place? Because it had to. Green emerged to correct the cold logic of orange and the rigid oppressive dogmas of blue. It brought the heart and humanism back into the conversation. Green reminds us that we are not machines, that emotions matter, and that equality, belonging, and compassion are not optional for humans. It asks, what does it mean to be whole? Not just to win or be successful, but what does it really mean to be a whole human being? So let's remember all of the healthy, positive contributions to society that the green value system brought to the world. I wonder what those who were at the Summer of Love in 1967 would have to say about the movement today, the wins they've had, the ups and the downs. So let's not forget all of the fruits of the labor that the green value system actually contributed to society. Spiritual pluralism and defeating the war on consciousness expansion, mental health and emotional literacy, environmental awareness and ecological values, human rights and social justice movements, inclusive education and parenting, restorative justice and conflict resolution, global humanitarianism, non-governmental organizations, humanitarian aid, the world-centric view of being a global citizen, not just a national one, community and belonging, local food co-ops, neighborhood support systems, volunteer work, compassion and moral concern, spiritual depth over empty materialism, emotional intelligence in leadership, work-life balance and well-being initiatives, sustainable business practices, purpose-driven branding, the rise of purpose-driven work, and holistic health and productivity. The green value system isn't the enemy, it's a necessary evolution, but only when it integrates what came before and stops trying to erase it. What does a post-woke, integrated, and future-proof worldview actually look like? Well, the green value system isn't the end of the road. It's a gateway. And this next stage, very few people live here. But those who do see the whole spiral. Enter stage yellow, the first stage of second-tier value systems and a total game changer. This stage marks a shift from ideological loyalty to systemic intelligence. Yellow sees the world as a complex, interconnected, evolving system, something that no single belief, tribe, or stage can fully grasp. When green fights for empathy, orange for success, and blue for order, yellow steps back and asks what's really going on here and what actually works. Yellow is about flexibility, synthesis, leverage, and long-range evolution. It honors all previous stages without being bound by them. It doesn't act out of ego or ideology. It acts for the health of the whole system. Think of people like Barack Obama, Gabor Mate, Ray Dalio, or Elon Musk when he's in his visionary mode. These are people who see across disciplines and time horizons. Mate connects trauma to public health policy. Dalio models financial history over centuries. Musk builds transplanetary infrastructure. And Obama bridged bitter political divides. They're not tribal. They're not reactive. They're not obsessed with winning arguments. They're here to integrate truth, adapt with clarity, and act for the bigger picture. So while no country fully operates from stage yellow, certain organizations and governments exhibit some yellow consciousness in how they think, plan, and adapt. These systems prioritize long-term impact, integrative, diverse worldviews, and operate from principle rather than ideology. For example, the Long Now Foundation. They're a very cool foundation who promotes 10,000-year thinking, encouraging deep foresight, transdisciplinary collaboration, and planetary responsibility. SpaceX, when functioning from its most visionary layer, embodies yellow by merging engineering, ecological concern, and planetary scale innovation into a single adaptive system. On a national level, Singapore often demonstrates yellow pragmatism, blending traditional values with cutting-edge urban design, multicultural governance, and strategic adaptability to changing global conditions. What defines yellow in these examples is not a fixed model or a fixed set of values, but a mindset, the ability to see the whole system, work across perspectives, and act with clarity in service of the greater good. So I know this sounds highly academic, so let's bring it back down to the practical. So let's imagine a school board meeting about the sexual education curriculum. After listening to the conflict between the traditionalist, the blue, who says they're corrupting our children with LGBTQ propaganda, and listening to the rational reformer of orange, who says, we'll go what the science tells us, what the rational scientific evidence-based material tells us, we'll educate them on that. Listening to the inclusive activist, green, the science might say this, but we have to make sure that we include anyone whose sexuality or gender may lie off the spectrum to avoid offending them or to avoid having their feelings hurt. Where the center of gravity for that person is at the stage yellow value system, they might say something like, I hear that each of you is trying to protect something important. One of you is emphasizing moral guidance and age-appropriate boundaries. Another is focused on scientific accuracy and preparing students for real-world risks. And someone else is advocating for emotional safety, inclusion, and respect for diverse identities. And these aren't competing values. They're different parts of a healthy system. So what if we designed a curriculum that evolves by developmental stage? For younger students, we could focus on body safety, emotional boundaries, and trusted adults, topics that support both family values and early mental health. And as students mature, we integrate medically accurate content, discussions about consent, gender identity, and healthy relationships using evidence-based methods shown to reduce harm and increase well-being. We could also offer opt-in modules or parental involvement frameworks to allow flexibility without compromising educational integrity. This way, we're not just reacting to a values conflict, we're designing an adaptive, layered approach that respects the diversity of our community while preparing students for a complex world. The real question isn't who's right, it's what combination of structure, science, and compassion will actually work for different families at different stages in the real world. Yellow doesn't reject the structure and traditional values of blue. It doesn't reject the scientific, rational, data-centric view of orange, and it doesn't reject the empathy, emotional intelligence, and inclusivity of the green value stage. It blends them with precision, fluidity, and care. So to really nail this in, let's take a very hot topic, immigration policy. So the stage blue value system might say something like, we need law and order. A nation needs clear borders, rules, and cultural identity. If we just let people in without structure, we're going to risk chaos, crime, the loss of our values. Immigrants should respect our way of life, follow the rules, integrate, or stay out. They're sapping our services, they're getting free preferential treatment, they aren't even contributing to society. They don't even hold traditional Christian values. If we import the third world, we become the third world. They aren't truly American, they aren't truly Canadian, they aren't truly British, they aren't truly European, they aren't truly German, they aren't truly Indian, they aren't truly Hungarian, they aren't truly Polish. So the core concern is security, order, and cultural preservation. The values are duty, national identity, and assimilation. The benefit here is the valid concern of security, order, and cultural preservation. But the risk is encouraging an us versus them ethnocentric mindset, bordering on racism, where immigrants represent a threat to our jobs, our women, and our culture. It is openly ethnocentric and inhumane. Someone operating at the stage orange value system says, well, we should think in terms of economics and productivity. Immigration should be merit-based, so let's bring in skilled workers who boost innovation, pay taxes, and fill labor gaps. Let's be efficient, data-driven, and strategic. We need growth, not sentiment. I don't care where they're from, as long as they boost our productivity and are skilled in their work. Let's make mutually beneficial deals with other nations so we can benefit economically from immigration. The core concern here is competitiveness, efficiency, and return on investment in that human capital. The values are merit, contribution, and data. So the benefit here is that it's no longer about ethnicity or skin color. It's about the value added to society, the economics, the growth based on merit. A businessman doesn't care where his workers come from, as long as they're skilled and efficient and generate profit for him. The risk here is seeing immigrants as dispensable units of economic progress, a cheap, data-driven solution to plug labor gaps, and the complete ignorance of cultural impact or community building. Just as Michael Jackson didn't say, it doesn't matter if you're black or white, as long as you produce shareholder value by year end, or I can profit off of you. The stage green value system says every human has the right to safety, dignity, and opportunity. There is no such thing as an illegal immigrant. These are people, not numbers. Many are fleeing war, poverty, or oppression. We should open our borders, welcome them with compassion, and build inclusive communities that celebrate diversity and not erase it. The core concern is empathy, inclusion, and global responsibility. The values are equality, human rights, and emotional connection. The benefit here is that green, quite similarly to blue, is aware of the cultural human-based impact. But green emphasizes the human rights, emotional empathy, human-centric impact of immigration. Green is more aware of the wider global issues that can cause immigration spikes and want to welcome those migrants or refugees with compassion. The risk here is that the emotional idealism doesn't line up with the system's thinking. Is the health service prepared enough? What about housing and accommodation? What about cultural impact and risk of homogenous cultural communities where true diversity doesn't exist, but ethnocentric communities are at risk of forming? Well, here comes the stage yellow value system. Someone whose center of gravity is at the stage yellow value system would say something like this. What I'm hearing from each of you is that you're protecting something real: security and cultural cohesion, economic strength, and human dignity. The truth is, a resilient immigration policy shouldn't choose between them, it should synthesize them. So let's build a tiered system, clear legal pathways, and civic onboarding for the blue value system, strategic skill and labor matching systems for the orange value system, local integration support, and trauma-informed resources for the green value system. Let's use real-time data, cultural insight, and system design to meet real needs, without moralizing and without moral panic. It's not about being soft or strict. It's about being adaptive, human, and integrative, so everyone belongs and contributes. So what has the yellow value system already provided for us? You won't find the yellow value system yelling on Twitter. You'll find it in the code, the systems, the policy labs, the foundations, the think tanks, and the quietly transformative projects that no one tweets about. So although yellow is rare and emergent, it's already had a significant quiet behind-the-scenes impact in areas like system design, governance, technology, health, and social innovation. What has yellow brought us so far? Things like effective altruism, Gabor Mate's trauma-informed medicine, circular economies, biomimicry, urban planning, Web3, Decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, GitHub, Linux, open source collaboration, Ubiquity University, integral psychology, AI alignment labs, decentralized governance experiments in Taiwan and Germany, Singapore's data-informed civic planning and social cohesion systems. And yes, brace yourself, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization. You may hate them, but hate is usually a first-tier reaction to second-tier thinking. These institutions are not perfect, I get it. They are unelected, relatively unaccountable. These are some of the few organizations trying to function transnationally across ideologies and belief systems with long-term integrative intelligence. These organizations' center of gravity is shifting towards stage yellow. They're pretty much as anti-woke as stage blue and orange are. So how are all the things that I just mentioned post-woke? Some examples of wokeness included tribal identity, emotional policing, binary oppressor-oppressed framing, fragility, cancel culture, and moralism. Whereas stage yellow is more multi-perspectival, not tribal. It's emotionally intelligent, but not emotionally reactive. It has structure and compassion and clarity. And it chooses integration over ideology. Yellow doesn't cancel, it connects. It doesn't silence, it synthesizes. It doesn't rage against the machine, it restructures the machine, which admittedly is a lamer band name. It's post-ideological. It's not left, it's not right, but it's beyond the polarity. It focuses on solutions, synthesis, and adaptability to context-specific situations, not blame or emotional allegiance or ideological allegiance. This is the post-woke future we're heading towards. It's already starting to emerge around us. Now let's talk about how you can play a part in it. No gurus, no PhDs, no passports to Singapore are required. Just a shift in awareness, leadership, and the way you show up in the world. So why should you care about all of this? Politics, spiral dynamics, culture wars, post-wokeness. Because while you can't control the world, you can evolve yourself within it. This isn't just a political model. It's a psychological map of you, of your thinking, of your career, of your leadership, of your values, your ability to make sense out of chaos and actually move forward in your life with clarity. See, most people never leave the worldview that they were raised in. They follow rules, they chase success, or get stuck in endless spiritual seeking. But there's a value system, a stage of consciousness beyond the noise, beyond the culture war, beyond the rage-click discourse of woke versus anti-woke. It's the yellow integral stage of consciousness, and it's what a post-woke mindset looks like. It doesn't cancel, it doesn't conform, it doesn't fight for one side. It transcends and integrates all of the sides. Only 1 to 5% of people operate from this stage of consciousness. That's not a motivational quote, that's backed by developmental psychology research. And getting there, it's not about being better. It's about becoming more fluid, more adaptive, more free. You grow by becoming aware of the parts of you which are still stuck in earlier developmental stages. Your stage blue craving for certainty and rules. Your stage orange obsession with material success and status. Your stage green needs for emotional security and approval. And then you integrate them. Not reject, not repress, not react. Integrate. That's what being post-woke really means. Not abandoning compassion, but evolving beyond fragility. Not ditching logic, but weaving it with empathy. Not staying stuck in sides, but seeing the whole system and playing a better game. Because this isn't just a model, it's a psychoactive tool. Once it enters your worldview, you can't unsee it. And once you start seeing the world through it, you start to change fast.